There we go. Now we're recording. All right, cool. So welcome to class, guys. This is motion graphics. So really the idea of this class is I'm going to teach you After Effects. Um, if you're not familiar with it, After Effects is motion graphics software. It used to be Flash, or it kind of evolved from Flash. There's kind of a bunch of different versions of it. This lives somewhere between like animation and video editing. So we're going to take a look at just kind of a bunch of different lessons, run through kind of like how it works. We'll have some projects. I'll show you guys how I use After Effects, and then give you guys some opportunities to kind of take a look at different applications for it. I think the thing that tends to work the best with, as far as like thinking about motion graphics, a lot of the stuff you're seeing like on Instagram, like any kind of like video content you're seeing on there, where there's kind of like a little bit more in terms of like kinetic type, like things moving around like that, that's like a kind of a good way of thinking about like how After Effects works. We're going to play around with some of just the basics today. So we're going to take a look at lesson 1 from the book. I'm going to go through all the like syllabus, how like Blackboard's organized, all that stuff first, and then we'll play around with that. And then I'm going to give you guys some time. Anything that you see here, everything's going to be recorded, and then once it's finished, I'll save this, I'll post it up. There's also a YouTube channel I have that's got every single lesson posted with all the directions. So if you do want to work ahead, or if you have a question about something, or you just think it's easier to follow along, like watching the steps, pausing it, trying yourself, kind of working alongside with me, I think that's probably the best way of doing it. I ran this class this summer as an online only class. I didn't do any direct instruction. I just used the YouTube channel, and I think I had 13 people in the class, and basically like I had maybe 3 questions the entire semester, and everybody passed. So I've got this like, this is only my 3rd time running a class, but I feel like I've got like a pretty good structure in place. We'll also have some projects that we'll be doing that kind of give us a little bit more real world application. So if we haven't met before, I'm Chris. I've been using After Effects now for probably about 6 or 7 years. Everything that I know about After Effects is all like kind of self-taught stuff. This wasn't software that existed like when I was going to school. This is all just kind of like evolving stuff. But I do have a ton of experience in video editing, so a lot of that came a little bit more easily to me, just because I'm kind of used to like time-based media, working with like a timeline and cutting, like doing like linear editing, that type of stuff. So you'll get a chance to see what all that means kind of throughout the course of the semester. So what I want to start off with is just kind of like how Blackboard is going to look. We'll run through the syllabus, get kind of all that stuff taken care of, and then we'll jump in to that first lesson. So class sessions are going to run 1 to 3 on Tuesday afternoons. This is going to be kind of one of those things where we're going to play it by ear as far as like what in-person attendance is going to look like. I have a 6-year-old who's not vaccinated and a 12-year-old who is, but their mom works at a nursing home, and like if one of them gets sick and then she gets sick and it spreads into like the nursing home, like people could die. So I'm going to be like very sensitive about this stuff. So I just wanted to kind of like play this by ear, because there's so much content that exists online. If we do have to shift, I'll at the very least run these things as virtual. So I'll do like a live demo for you, so that if you have questions and you want to work alongside with me, you can, and you can just ask me for clarification or whatever. Or if you do want to work ahead and say you just get stuck on one step, you can reach out to me that way. As far as the textbook for the class, it is the After Effects Classroom in a Book. If you're watching the video feed, it's this one. It's kind of like this purple cover here. Um, it's available in the bookstore. You can jump on anywhere online and grab it. All the stuff that comes with it, so there's a bunch of downloadable asset files. I have all that stuff already loaded up on Blackboard for you guys, so you don't need to worry about that. So say you happen to stumble upon a free PDF of it, that would work if you want to use those. But also you may not need it, period, because everything that we do from this book, I'm going to demo step by step for you guys over the course of the semester. So it's kind of your call. They're nice to have as backups, or if you do want to work ahead, that type of thing. As far as tech goes, just make sure you got, it says Illustrator, sorry, that's a typo. Make sure you got in the After Effects software installed. You're going to need 2 pieces installed out of the Creative Cloud installer: After Effects and Media Encoder. After Effects is where you're going to do all the designing. Media Encoder is how you're going to convert it into an actual usable file. So just like when you took InDesign, you can work in INDD, but it doesn't really do any good until you create like a PDF of it. Same thing works here. We need to output this into a format that'll actually be readable on devices. If you do not have a computer at home that can run After Effects, I highly recommend you go to the library. You can call them. You can just show up there right now, like after class. But get a MacBook if you don't have one. I see that like we've got a ton of people that connected through the virtual. Like we have 3 people in person, and the rest of you guys are all like virtual. That's totally fine. I assume that if you're home, you're probably hopefully already opened After Effects, and make sure it runs on your machine. It lags. I mean, it was even running slow on my computer, and like we have some pretty like heavy duty iMac desktop units. So just keep in mind that like this is super RAM intensive software, so you want to make sure you have a machine that can run it properly. So this is just like the start here. This will be the last time that when you log into Blackboard, you see this. When you log into Blackboard, what you're normally going to see is this announcements page, and you'll see like I have this class really, really, really buttoned up. All the dates, what's due, what's assigned, a link to the session, everything all the way through the end of the semester is fully planned out for you guys. So anything that you guys need, Q&A sessions, assignments, all that, that's all right in here. And at the very bottom of this page is where my office hours are. They're going to be running Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The Google Meet link is the exact same for all of my office hours. I just use one link, so you can jump into that if you ever need me. You do not need to wait for office hours to ask me a question. If you're not familiar with it or you haven't, check out Hangouts. I use this all the time. Hangouts is the best way to get in touch with me because it buzzes my phone, my watch. I never miss a Hangout. So if you do have like a quick question, it doesn't matter when you're working, just jump in and ask via Hangouts as well. That works really well. You've obviously, like if you're in here, you see like collaborate. This is where you're going to be able to jump in and join the sessions. I'll have these pretty much like when a class ends, within a day or two, I'll post next week's session. I'll have it set so that they'll open like 10, 15 minutes ahead of time, and then they'll be open for the 2 hours. I'll tell you right now, no class will go longer than like 60 minutes. I am not like a super like long-winded guy. I like to give you the information, make sure everybody knows what they're doing, and then we move on, and it'll be kind of more like open lab stuff. Underneath assignments, that is where you're going to find all of the assignments. You can see the stuff's all hidden from you guys right now. This is all the stuff that we're going to do over the course of the semester. Let me turn to edit mode. Right now, all you need is this lesson 1. If you click on lesson 1, there's actually not much in there. It's just this assets. And if you click on it to download it, that'll give you the actual like work files. So you'll see here, it gives me this assets folder. And inside, there's this MP3, a little video clip, and a little Photoshop file. And those are the things that we're going to work off of. Going back, here is my YouTube playlist. This is every After Effects lesson, and this isn't just like crap I found on YouTube. This is literally me talking through all of these. So I record the lessons. When they're done, I download them, I post them up. So if you guys want to jump ahead on anything or you want another run through of it, today's lesson will be posted. There's also this one that exists from last year. So as we go over the course of the semester, I just replace these with newer ones so that it's kind of a little bit more updated. The software hasn't changed from the last time I did this. So everything will be basically the same. It'll probably just be me doing a little bit better version of it because I've done this a couple times. So I can definitely tell there's a couple of clunky ones where I'm like looking at it and it's like something's not working right because my brain's not working correctly with it yet, and I'm just not super used to it. So I'll replace these as we go. Underneath projects, when your stuff is in there, or when we actually have projects to kind of talk about, that'll be in there. We're not going to jump into projects right away. We're going to get a little bit of practice with these things first before we start actually like jumping into projects. There's just a couple of things I have in here, like pixel dimension size for YouTube or aspect ratios for different feeds. So like Facebook feeds, Instagram sizes, story sizes. We need to know aspect ratios and sizes so when we build files that they can work correctly. So when you're thinking about like when you guys watch like YouTube, or when you watch like if we're scrolling through Instagram, videos are 1-to-1. So if it's like 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels, or if you're going to do like a story, you do it like the opposite of like how you're looking at your TV. If you turned it 90 degrees, that's what your phone's functionally doing. So we want to make sure that we're working to the right aspect ratios. We'll talk more about that when we get to those points. But at some point, you actually are going to build like a little social media campaign and creating little, After Effects animated video pieces for all those. Underneath assets, I have a bunch of stuff ready to go for you. The thing that's different about After Effects versus all the other software pieces is that After Effects, it's not like it's just still images. You're going to need video, you're going to need audio, you're going to need different like template things. So one of the projects we're going to do is just kind of finding different assets. There's a bunch of stuff already in here. So what I'll have you guys do, and this is stuff that past students have found, is just go look for asset sites so that you can kind of find free stuff. These are basically all built as places to get free stock footage. So if you're going to go in and like build a project for, say, like a promotional piece for something like for Instagram or whatever, this is a great place to find video without having to go and like shoot stuff yourself. It's all nice high-res stuff. It's all downloadable, usable right in After Effects. There's a bunch of stuff in there for you guys to work through. So again, that's royalty-free video, free audio. This is all stuff that if you use it and you post this to YouTube, you won't get like hit with a copyright violation. It's all like free use stuff. There's some additional plugins. We'll talk more about that as we go kind of throughout the course of the semester. We're not going to worry about that stuff right now. Other parts you're going to be taking a look at. So if you click on My Grades, that'll show you. So like lesson 1, lesson 2, asset research, all the stuff that's in here, you can expect that these are going to be the actual projects that you're going to be working on and getting a grade for. If you take a look, like faculty information, oh, that's weird. My stuff didn't import. It's basically just the same stuff that's on there. My office is right next door. I'll pop that on there with my phone number. Google Hangouts is the best way to get at me, and otherwise just email. And if you click on this contact the instructor, it just jumps you right into an email form that you can submit right through Blackboard, or just reply to anything that I've sent you, because I know I've sent you guys at least 3 or 4 emails since this class has actually started. So does that make sense as far as how I have Blackboard organized? Anything jumping out, you guys? And as far as like people at like that are virtual and not in the classroom, is the audio good?
That's good.
Okay, cool. I just got. Is it good? I'm sorry, I missed that last one. Okay, cool. Yeah, I just got like a new mic set up in here, so I was going like open air, and now I have like a lapel mic thing on me, so hopefully that's like clear. I'm just trying to fight against masks. Also, too, it's set up now so that if I have to like get up or whatever, like the audio will travel with me. But the other thing too is that if somebody has a question inside the classrooms, I can actually pull up their screen with this remote desktop software. So Kayla, I'm gonna quick grab yours as just like a quick example here. So like say that Kayla had a question, I can slide over my screen and you can see me like go onto her screen and answer the question. So that way, if there are any questions, I can make sure that everybody sees exactly what I'm talking about. I saw a question just came up in the chat about where the YouTube videos are. That's right underneath assignments. It's the top link, just as After Effects Lessons YouTube playlist. And you can follow it or favorite it or whatever on YouTube if you want to just keep a shortcut to it. Cool. All right, so that is, sorry, let me see. Okay. So that's really how I have Blackboard organized. Things pretty straightforward. What I do need to do is run through the syllabus with you. So if you click on that and then go to Motion Graphic Design Syllabus, I will try and make this as quick as possible. I know you're probably going to hear a bunch of these all week. Again, we're hybrid virtual, so that means that we're going to meet here in person. And my plan is to be here every Tuesday afternoon. And there's going to be some weeks that we may just go virtual, some weeks that I may just point you to like an existing video for the lesson. And then some weeks where if we have like open labs, we're not going to come in. My big idea behind like doing this hybrid virtual setup is that we're going to try and like mitigate contact as much as possible. So I don't want you guys to have to come down on a campus and expose yourself if it's like an open lab week and you've got a computer that works for you at home, because obviously they're available through the library. So that's really kind of how it is. I'm going to walk through from like week to week, and within like a day or two of the class wrapping up, I'll let you know what to expect. Next week, I'm fully planning to be here in person doing the demo. And again, every session will be virtual and every session will be recorded and reposted. So if you do miss a class, that's fine. Let me know. The other thing that you guys need to be aware of, and this is brand new and I'm going to come back to this, make sure you're logged in to the session and Collaborate, whether you're in person or at home. And if you're going to miss a class, you got to let me know, especially in the first 2 weeks, because if you miss either this week or next week, they're going to automatically withdraw you from the class. It's a financial aid thing. So just kind of something to think about. Google Meet, that link is available on Blackboard. So my office hours are going to be 10 to 12, so 10 a.m. to 12 till noon on Mondays. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I have a break after my morning class and before my afternoon, so I'm just going to use that block, that 1 hour block, as virtual office hours. I'll be sitting in here, and then I'll also just have like a Google Meet window open, so I'll be able to answer questions that way. As far as communication, if you've taken a class with me, I'll get back to you right away. Email is fast. Google Hangouts is probably even faster. Again, as far as the course, basically the idea of this is that you're going to be building images, video, illustration, all stuff to be worked within After Effects. So we're going to be creating a bunch of different types of animations, that type of thing. Why is this? This is really annoying. Okay, so this looks like this is right. Okay, so the prereq for this is the InDesign class. Again, we talked about the textbook. It's an After Effects Classroom Handbook 2020. Whether you get it, it's kind of up to you. You can maybe take a lesson or two with me and see how you like it. Between the videos and my virtual presentations, you may not actually want it. Here's all the outcome summary stuff that you're going to need to do, creating just digital animations. There's Career Essentials. At the end of the semester, there'll be a Career Essentials grade. If you pass the class, you get the credit for the Career Essentials and you're good to go. In the meantime, don't worry about it. It's just an assignment that shows up and it's not actually weighted. It's not worth anything. It's just something that I have to include as part of a technical college system requirement. As of right now, this is our class schedule. I can tell you right now, this is pretty much set in stone. This is what our semester is going to look like. The only question is going to be whether or not we're in person. And this was before we changed it. Whether or not we're in person or we're going to be doing it virtually, and I'll let you guys know that ahead of time. So it looks like we're going to run through about 4 lessons, and then we'll start getting into some projects, and then we'll kind of take a look. As you can see, like at the end of the semester, it gets a little bit more loose with open labs. And again, those open lab weeks, we will not be meeting in person. Those will be virtual weeks, and we'll kind of figure out as we get closer what the rest of that will look like. Again, this is a hybrid class, so you guys can either attend in person, say that you're here with me today in the room and you decide you don't really need to be here for it and you'd rather work from home, that's totally fine. You can attend like virtually. Either way is fine. Either way counts as attendance. If you are going to miss a class because you're going to just decided like, hey, I'm busy, I'm working, whatever, that's totally fine. It'll be recorded. I just ask that you let me know so I can make sure I mark you down for attendance accordingly, and that you just get the assignment turned into me by the start of that next class. And that's pretty much how we're going to run. So every week when we have a class, the following week is when the assignment will be due. The one thing is just access changes. Like, so as of right now, like we're just doing masks and kind of distancing stuff, and hopefully everyone's vaccinated. That's the plan right now, but if numbers keep getting worse, just be aware that the college may make the decision to move everybody virtual. Right now, they're leaving it up to instructors. So I'm gonna just try and like mitigate exposure as much as possible and like minimize us being on campus unless it's necessary. And then, you know, if the college makes a bigger decision, we'll just have to kind of roll with that. But either way, we have kind of all these tools at our disposal, so I don't think it should be a problem for the class. As far as grading goes, 75% of your grade for the class is going to be based on just the assignments, the weekly lessons, getting that stuff done. And then the other 25% will be the projects that we do. So it'll be, you know, researching it, concepting it, coming up with a presentation, building out your file, check-ins with me, final presentation. All of your individual assignments, the weekly stuff that we're going to be doing, that will be done and turned in via email. All the projects will be shared via Google Drive in a big public shared folder so that everybody can kind of see everybody else's. Because this is new to pretty much everybody in the room or everybody in the class, I want you guys to see other people's work because you don't really understand how the software works or what you can do with it unless you see kind of other people playing with it. And I think that's really the best way of doing it. We're not going to do like super formal critiques. We're just going to kind of do like almost show and tells, like, hey, this is how mine turned out. Give everybody a chance to watch it. And then if you have a question about like, hey, how did you do this or how did you do that? Then, you know, then the designer can take a minute and explain like whether it was filters or process or, you know, kind of how they got to what they got to. Attendance is on here. There's online and like in-person attendance. The big takeaway is that instructors don't control withdrawals anymore. So there's been situations in the past where people have been fine as far as attendance, but maybe like something came up and they just weren't getting work turned in and whatever. I could withdraw students in the past, and withdrawal is good because you don't get a failing grade and then it doesn't put you on academic probation. It just counts as a W and you can just try again next semester. They don't let the instructors do that anymore. If you miss 2 consecutive weeks without like reaching out to me or whatever, or you just don't show up and I mark you as not present, they're going to automatically withdraw you from the class. They'll automatically withdraw in the first 2 weeks of the semester for like financial reasons and you get some refund. After I think it's after that 2 or 3 week window, then like that money like dwindles way down and they'll just pull you from the class altogether. So just be aware that like attendance is going to be kind of more critical than ever. I think this is kind of the college making sure like people are like getting through to completion because I think we kind of lost some people like through COVID. If you're not going to be attending like through the virtual session or in person and you're going to be doing it online a little bit later, please let me know. Again, like they're asking 48 classroom hours and then like 96 outside of class. The way we're all structured now, I'm not super concerned about this. I have it really well organized for you guys and really clear with deadlines and all that. I just want to make sure you're just staying in touch with me. I think communication is the big thing. There's rights and responsibilities. There's a handbook. There's generally like, you know, best keys to success for the class. Honestly, just stay on your email, stay in Blackboard. You'll be good to go. And just communicate with me. The other thing is build yourself a schedule, especially those of you that are not in the room with me right now. It's real easy to like wrap up this session, close the window, and then just like, I don't know, get lost in TikTok or like, you know, whatever out in the actual world. If you don't build yourself a structure, it becomes really hard for you to kind of get this stuff like consistently done. Some of these lessons are going to take like 30, 45 minutes. Some of them are going to take 2 hours, but giving yourself, say like, say this class is going to run from 1 until 2, and then by 2, I'm going to be finished. Give yourself from that 2 till 3, just block it off. Don't plan anything. Just say, I'm going to knock it out. If it takes me 20 minutes, cool. If it takes me 45, I still got 15 minutes to spare. But build yourself a schedule. That is the most important thing. Like I was terrible at that when I was in college until I was like a junior. When I figured that that was my problem, that made life way, way easier. There's academic support services, all sorts of different like tech support stuff that's available to you guys. If you have any issues with like, you need advising, you need help with like financial support, whatever, we have a pathway office. It's C204. They're awesome. The advisors down there are great. There's different like resource centers. So all that's available, like transportation stuff, housing stuff, food stuff, counseling services, anything. We have all that there for you. The big goal is that like you made the effort to get into this school and declare a program and to make progress towards it. We want to make sure that you cross the finish line on it. Obviously, like PPE stuff, like for being in classrooms right now, just make sure if you're coming in that you got a mask. That's really all we're asking as of right now. Right, there are 20 computers in this room. And the people that are in person right now, there's 3. So we got tons of space in here. But I also don't know that I have room for everyone if they all come. So if you do plan on coming, or this is like not the best for you doing it virtually and you want to sit in person, just give me a heads up. That's totally fine. I just want to make sure that I have like safe space for everybody. Standard like student handbook stuff covers like policy and procedure, academic dishonesty, civility in the classroom, just making sure that, look, it's respectful communication. I've never had a problem with any of that stuff. As far as withdrawals, we talked about that. Basically, the college is just in charge of it. So you can either declare, you can withdraw yourself at any point, or if you miss 2 classes, the college is just going to withdraw you automatically. There's a grade appeal process. I've never gone through it. I couldn't tell you what it looks like because I've never had a problem with grading, because I've been pretty straightforward and like very clear with what everything looks like. There's a complaints and compliments procedure. If you do have a problem with me or any other instructor, the first thing the college is going to ask is that you try to talk to them directly to resolve the problem. If you feel like that's not working or you're not comfortable doing that, you can go through into the complaints process. There's links in there. And again, everything in blue here is all highlighted external links for you guys. There's NDA statements, ADA statements, Title IX, all that's all in there. I'm not going to read that to you, but it all exists. And then as far as emergency stuff, there is this thing called Rave Alert. You can sign up for it. So if there's closures, so say we get to the beginning of December, we get hit with a snowstorm, you'll know about it ahead of time if you sign up for Rave Alert. Also, if there's like fire drills, tornado warnings, any sort of like just campus emergencies, like over the summer with like the Bucks winning the title and it being crazy down here, they closed campus early because there were so many road closures. That's what Rave Alert does. It just lets you know what's going on around campus, and it tends to affect the downtown campus the most. So I'd recommend signing up for it just so you're in the loop on it. Clery Act is basically just saying if there's any crime committed on or around campus, the college will notify you just so you're aware of kind of safety conditions. And there's a crime log that you can find. Usually it's just cars being broken into, that kind of stuff. For syllabus changes, I reserve the right to change any of this stuff, specifically timeline and how we meet. So that's really going to be the thing that if anything changes, it's not necessarily going to be like what we cover each week. It's going to be whether or not we're going to be in the classroom doing it or if we're just going to be doing it virtually. And then last thing is please click on this. As you click, it shows, I can see like people are logged in. So as you're clicked in, it just makes sure that I see that you've read the syllabus and that you acknowledge that that's what's going on in the class. Any questions on that stuff? Anything jumping out, you guys? All right, cool. I did that as quickly as humanly possible. I hope you appreciate it. All right, so now that we covered all the Blackboard stuff, I want to walk through just kind of the basics of After Effects, and we're going to start by clicking in Assignments, and again, getting in a workflow, and you can click on Lesson 1 Assets, and that is going to give you this folder, and I just pulled mine out of my Downloads folder. I also want to take a look. There's 2 different pieces of software that I'm going to be using here. I'm going to be using After Effects. I'm also going to use Media Encoder. So After Effects is how we're going to design. Media Encoder is going to be how we actually put everything out of After Effects and into a usable format. So when you're installing Creative Cloud on your computer, make sure you have both of those pieces of software installed and updated. And then I just throw it on my dock right away. I leave Media Encoder open when I have After Effects running because anytime I'm done and I output, it has to open it anyways. So it just saves me a couple of minutes when I'm ready to wrap stuff up. So first thing I'm gonna do is click on After Effects. Mine was preloaded. Yours may take a little while, especially on the first load to actually run. And it basically looks like this. It's got like a little home and there's little tutorials and it's kind of like nice little stuff they have there, but we don't need any of that because I'm going to walk you through all of this. So let me grab my book here, make sure I don't miss any steps. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a project with just some of these basic parts. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this isn't like kind of anything you've done before. It's a little bit similar, but it's also kind of different. There is a learning curve to this, so all I ask is that you just kind of stay patient with it. Inside here, we've got this MP4 file, so it looks like this dog swimming to catch a ball. We've got this movement MP3, some very cool music, and we've got this Photoshop file, and it's just a PSD file. The cool part about After Effects is it will take these files and it knows how to interpret all of them, including a PSD file, because it knows that that's an actual Adobe asset. So it's this thing in real time. Now, what I'm going to do is from here, oh, I got a weird little feedback there. From here, this is just a blank, empty window. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start importing pieces from here into this window. Now, if you take a look on the left, got kind of like this little project pane. This is where I'm going to add all my assets and kind of manage them. In here, this is where we're going to be like our preview window is going to be. And then down on the bottom, this is our timeline. So this is how we're going to organize our kind of layers of assets, kind of play with them and play with some settings. And then along the top right here, there's these effects and presets. There's a thing for character or paragraph. So there's a bunch of different tools. The main ones we're going to be using today is like character and effects and presets. And there's so many of them that there's actually a search bar for it. So we'll play around with that. So what I want to do first is I want to get my assets into my project. I can't build anything unless I have all these pieces, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this folder and I'm going to take these two, the movement and the swimming dog, and I'm just going to drag them over. Oh, that's weird. Let's make a new composition then. So from here, because it's not letting me drag over, and I'm not sure why, because it was literally just doing it a minute ago. Oh, no wonder, I'm not in my project tab. Let me click here. I was in my, when I clicked on effects and presets, it went into effects controls. I want to go under project. Here, when I click on project, this is where I'm going to manage all my assets. So there we go. Let me grab this and drag it over. So these things, there's really not a whole lot that can be done with it. They're just kind of are what they are. They're MP3s and MP4s. They remember things like frame rate, file size, all that. But PSDs are a little more complicated. I'm going to drag this thing in separately. So when I drag this one over, it's going to ask me some questions. It recognizes that this is a special file. This thing isn't just is what it is file. There's kind of some properties to it. So what I'm going to do is I can do it as footage. That just merges it all. It flattens it all, right? I can do composition, and again, it'll flatten it. Or I can retain the layer sizes. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it a composition, and I want to keep my layer sizes. And I want to make sure that they remain editable. I don't want to merge them all into footage. If it's editable, I can go in and I can actually play with individual layers within the Photoshop file right in After Effects. I don't have to reopen it in Photoshop and adjust it and re-import it. I can work right within the software. So I'm going to click OK. And there we go. Now notice what it does is it shows me these title layers, the background, and the text. And it retains those individual layers as editable, but it calls it a composition. So that's what we're going to really be building in After Effects. We're going to be dragging in a bunch of stuff. We're going to be building things called compositions, or I'll just call them comps for short. You can stack multiple pieces. So we can have comps inside a comp. So we can have a lot of different pieces happening. And we're going to do kind of a limited version of that today. So first thing I want to do is I want to start bringing my stuff down into my timeline, because right now I don't have anything. It's just kind of some preloaded junk that I've gotten here. Now remember too, anything that goes into an After Effects project, it needs to be saved, and After Effects needs to know where it is. So now that I got all this stuff in here, I'm going to take my MP4 and drag it down into my timeline, and there's my dog. I'm going to grab my MP3 and drag this down. There's my little audio clip. I can see if I scrub forward with my little line, there's my dog swimming around. Now also, I've got this title here. I want to drag this in as its own separate piece, and I'm going to put this on top. Now notice that I can click and drag these objects up and down just like layers in Photoshop. Now notice that when I did this in a very specific order. I dragged down my big MP4, my video clip first, and that defined, because it was the first piece that went in, it defined the composition size. So if I did any of that stuff out of sequence, I can Command Z or Edit Undo. And again, the order I'm doing this in makes a difference. I want everything to match this 1280 by 720. So I'm going to grab that MP4 first. Then I'm going to throw in my audio file below it, and I'm going to throw my title, and I'm going to grab the comp version of it up top. And that's how all my stuff's going to kind of come together first. So far, so good. That making sense? All right, now the other thing I want to do before I start kind of playing around with settings is I'm going to go up to my composition window, and I'm going to go down to new composition. Oops, sorry. Composition settings. And here's my name. Here's my dimensions, my frame rates, how long everything is. So it's set to 7 seconds. So if I ever need to change anything, so say like because my video clip was 7 seconds long, it automatically set my whole footage to 7 seconds. Maybe I wanted to make it longer, or maybe I wanted to make it shorter. That's where I could change it. Say that I dropped in something and the sizing was wrong. I could go in here and I could just make my size bigger. I could make it 1280 by 720, and that would fix it right there. So far, so good? That making sense? All right.
Yep.
What's up? You good?
Yeah, I was just agreeing with you.
Okay, cool. All right, so what I want to do is I want to kind of play around with my positioning of stuff. There's different ways you can do it, but really what I want to do is I want to pay attention to what I have selected. So as I'm going to edit things like in my little composition window here, it's a matter of just like in Photoshop, you got to make sure you have the right objects selected. So like if I'm going to edit the audio, if I'm going to edit the video, or I'm going to edit this title, and as I grab things, it shows like a little bounding box here. So I could just click and drag, but notice that it doesn't do it proportionally. So I could hold my shift key to make it bigger or smaller. I could also click inside the box and reposition it that way. Now notice as I'm clicking on things, it's showing all these different pieces here. So if I collapse or expand out, it'll show me my position, scale, rotation, opacity. These are all different things that I can change. And notice that there's this little stopwatch. That'll let me do something called tweening, where it'll automatically make those adjustments. I can create a keyframe for it to start and end at a certain point. But for right now, I'm not going to worry about all that stuff. I'm going to just shrink it down a little bit, holding my shift key, and I'm just going to slide it down into the corner. For these, as you're doing these demos, yours can look however you want. It's just a matter of kind of getting your head around what those different parts of the process are. So now we got that done. I want to play around with this background, this video clip. I want to play around with the color of it. I want to kind of play with the contrast a little. So here, how we have these effects and presets, I'm going to come up to the top right corner and I'm going to click on that. And on my effects and presets, there's a little search bar. I'm going to look for something called contrast. And as I start typing, it starts auto-finding everything. Notice that I have this image creative, but I also have this color correction, auto contrast. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag it right onto that footage. And looks like kind of darkened it a little bit. It automatically adjusts contrast for me. And notice too, like with that little green bar that kind of tracks along, After Effects is going to want to render out footage as it goes. If I just hit play, you might run into these little spots where it pauses because it's just not rendering fast enough. So there's my footage with my contrast turned on. That makes sense? Now, anytime you add any effect to it, you can click right here on that little collapse arrow for the footage. And now I have a new effects thing that's on there. There it shows my auto contrast. And there it's showing me my amount. Blend with original, black clipping, white clipping. So I can go in and I can make adjustments to any filter one chunk at a time. So there's all those little options for you once you apply that on there. So now that we got that on there, let's play around with like something that's got a little bit more of like a stylized look to it. So I'm going to close off this contrast. I'm looking for something called CC Light. So there's two different ones. There's Generate, and then there's Transition. Transition is something you apply to the start or the end of a clip to kind of fade between the two of them. What I want to do is I want to do this light sweep. So I'm going to click on it. I'm going to drag it right onto this footage here. And it looks like it adds this little line. And again, I've got my effects. And now I've got a whole nother one for this light sweep. So anytime I drag something on, it's almost like a layer in Photoshop. It just adds it in as another piece, but it also shows me all these different settings that I can do. So here, if I play with it, my adjustments, and it looks like it's just kind of like this light setting on here. So again, if I wanted to make any of my adjustments to this thing, I could play around with kind of the amounts. So maybe I wanted to change my direction. So for my direction, instead of like negative, maybe I'll make it like plus 37. For my shape menu, I got it set to sharp. I could change that, so maybe I'll go to like smooth, kind of smooth it out a little bit. For my width, I'm going to turn my width up, just make it a little bit wider, maybe like 60, 70, somewhere in there. And that sweep intensity, it's up pretty high. The more I turn it up, the brighter it gets. I'm going to back this off. I want this to be a little bit more subtle. I'm going to set this down to maybe around like 20 or so, just like a little bit lighter. Now, once I'm done, one thing I recommend doing, and this is kind of standard like practice for everywhere, notice that this hasn't been saved yet. It's just an untitled project. I got my little star here. As I work, I'm going to stop and do a save as. I always save work in progress stuff just because this is such like RAM intensive stuff. After Effects bombs out once in a while. So I'm just going to call this thing L1 work in progress. And I'm going to click to show my locations. And I'll just throw it right in my assets folder and just keep everything all in one spot. But that way, as I'm working, I can do a quick Command S and save as I go. Now, we got some of these basic pieces put on this video. If I press play, it's going to start kind of rendering it out. Kind of slows down and like but it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. After one kind of weird slow playback, you'll notice that it'll kind of start playing back the right way. Now, we've got all that done. I want to screw around with that text here. How I got this text box. I want to kind of play around with these settings. So what I'm going to do is, rather than try and like mess with it right here, notice how my little icons, like here I'm seeing like a little iTunes icon, a little QuickTime icon, and then here I've got this like circle, square, triangle thing. What that's telling me is that this is a composition. So this isn't going to act like all the other pieces. This acts like its own kind of editable asset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on where it says title, and it takes me to like a whole another window. So I'm not seeing all that other stuff. I'm not worrying about any of those other pieces. I'm just messing with this right now. So here you can see like right now, here's my main composition, and here I'm on this layer, and here I'm in this footage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close all this stuff, and then when I'm done with this title, it'll take me back to my main, but I want to play with things in here. So what I want to do first is on this title here, I got layers. I've got this ellipse background, and I've got this place where it says title here. I want to change what this says. I don't want this to say title here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this object, and now for my layer menu, I need to tell it what to do. I need to convert this thing into text that I can edit. So now it's editable text. My icon changed. It's like a little T icon. I can double click on it. It highlights it, and take a look. Automatically jumps me into my character menu if I want to change what this says. So I'm just going to have to say on the move. It even remembers the font. This is a little bit tight, so maybe I'm going to scale down the text a little bit. So I'll highlight it all, scale down my size a little, just make sure it fits in there a little bit better. I can kind of click and change my positioning. It'll snap. If I want to change my font, anything like that, color, I can do all that as well. The other thing I want to do is I want to take a look at that background, and I want to change the opacity on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that ellipse, and I'm going to press my T button. T is shortcut for opacity. There's some that are pretty obvious. T is a weird one for opacity, I guess, but if you hit P, that changes position. T jumps to opacity. I want to fade this back. So you can see as I fade it out, I'm going to set to maybe like 40%. It'll fade that background out. Now, it's just showing this on a black background, but if I close this little title and bring it back in, take a look, it auto updates. Now I can see that this is faded out against the background, and I can see that my text is there. So I'm going to jump back in. I'm going to double click on title again. I'm going to keep editing. I want to play around with this text a little bit more and kind of add some stuff to it. I'm going to animate this a little. So I'm going to take my time scrubber here, and I'm going to move this all the way back to 0. Notice that as you look, it goes F. That stands for frames, and then 1. So 1, 10, 20, 2, 10, 23. There's 30 frames in every 1 second. That's how it's measuring this. So right now I'd be at like the 10 frame mark. It shows right here. So on this little timestamp right here, I know that I'm at 3 seconds and 17 frames. It's not 3 minutes and 17 seconds. So 17, or the frames, is the smallest unit that you'll ever work in as you're going forward. But I'm going to scrub this all the way back to the beginning. I'm going to select my title, so I know I have it active. And again, it's just like Photoshop. I got to make sure I grab the right layer before I can make it active. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for an effect called fade up words. So let's grab this. And there's fade up words. I'll drag it right onto this. And it's going to automatically apply settings. So as I scrub forward, on the move, there we go. So it kind of scrubs that in. Now I can add multiple effects onto a single object. So that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to try kind of a couple different things. I'm going to again make sure that my little slider here is all the way at 0 because I want this effect to happen at the beginning of the animation. And what I'm going to look for is something called channel blur. And I've got kind of a couple different ones. Channel extract, channel combiner. Blur is the one that I want. I want this blur and sharpen. So I'm going to drag that onto this layer, this title here, and I can drag it here or I can drag it right onto the object. Either one works. And when I drag it on, notice that it shows me all the settings right here. So what I'm going to do is on this first 0 points, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check my red, my green, my blue, and my alpha. I'm going to turn these blurrinesses up to right around 50. If they're not exact, that's fine. And it doesn't look like anything's happening because it's all turned off, right? Like I can't see the type because it's disappearing. Now what happens is I want to make this a timed animation. I want this to happen over a sequence. So you see how there's these little like watch icons? I'm going to check all these things at this point. Now what I'm going to do is as I slide forward, and I can also see them down here, it's showing me the same settings. So whether you do it up here or down here, doesn't matter. Notice it shows me these little diamonds here, right? Now what I'm going to do is because I've clicked those on, I'm setting a keyframe. I'm setting that at this point, I want something to happen, okay? Now for my blur dimension, let's do this. Let's change this to vertical. My edge behavior, do I want edges on or off? I think I'll leave it set to off. I'm not seeing anything specific about it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrub forward to that 1 second mark. And at that 1 second mark is where I want this stuff to all turn off. So when I get to the 1 second mark, I'm going to turn these all the way to 0. So I'll scrub them all back. So now because I use that little clock, I'm telling it that here, have it all crazy and blurry, and then fade it out as it gets closer to that 1 second mark. That makes sense? So again, it's really just a matter of kind of playing around with it. But because I have all those settings done, I'm good. I can close this, and it's automatically going to update that right there as I scrub forward. Now, say that I wanted to, like, now that I got it on there, I think it's looking pretty cool. Maybe I want to make this object a little bit bigger. I can scrub this up, maybe make it a little bit larger. And now I can really see it. So now I've got all those kind of pieces put together. And I'm going to jump back to the beginning. I've got my regular MP3 that's just kind of playing the volume. If I click down on audio, I can play around with this waveform, and I can kind of adjust, like if I want it to be louder or softer. And kind of play with those decibels levels. We're also going to take a look as we get a little bit later in the lessons of fading things in and fading things out. We'll be able to do that. But so my MP3 looks good. My video clip, I've got my effects applied to it. That looks good. And then I've got my little title thing I do my comp on. So I'm going to hit my space bar and hit play just to see it. It's doing what I want it to do. So this just gives you kind of an idea of workflow and kind of process for this. We are not didn't get into any like things super specific, but I think the big thing that jumps out is really like looking at how you're managing your assets in this project tab, how you're bringing them in and what you're doing with them, how you're stacking them in here, and then how you're going to kind of drag some effects and use this menu to collapse and expand and kind of see all the different pieces that you can do. We didn't make anything too crazy. We just kind of used a bunch of pre-canned effects and dropped it on there. But from the start to the finish, in 10 minutes, we had something that looked a lot more kind of usable than the original stuff that came with it. Now, we have this footage done. Before I do anything to output it, I want to make sure I'm doing a save command. So I'll do a file save just to save what I got. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to output this thing as an MP4 through Media Encoder. I want to save this as a file that's compressed, that works on any device, that type of thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File, Export, and I want to add this thing to the Media Encoder queue. So I'll jump on that. And just like that, it pops it open. And you can see I did one earlier. And I can remove that one because that one's done. That's fine. Now, what it's going to ask me is some formatting stuff here. So first up, this is the format that it works off of. H.264 is what you always want to use. It's kind of like how it compresses. So like when you guys use JPEGs, how you can kind of control like the quality versus like the file size. H.264 will give you the best resolution and the smallest file size. So I always want to make sure I'm at H.264. Then there's a bunch of presets. So I can match sources. So I can just match the source that it came at. Or I can output it to specific devices. So like on my test one that I just did YouTube. So let me do that YouTube 1080 full high definition. And then the last thing I want to do is I'm going to click right here and I want to tell it where I want to save it to. So here, assets, right inside this main folder. I just want to make sure it's there. And I'm going to call this lesson 1 finished. And notice that it saves it automatically as an MP4. Looks good. I'm just going to hit play right here. That'll start the queue. On the bottom of the screen, it shows a little run through of what's happening, like what frame it's on. So it's showing me the file name, where it's saving it to, my formats and presets, my video, my audio bit rates, all that stuff. Looks like we got about 15 more seconds. There we go. Should be in my assets folder now. And there it is, my MP4. The MP4 is the only file I'll ever want you to email me at the end of these lessons. I don't want anything other than these MP4s. If you give me these AEP files, it doesn't work unless you include all the assets along with it. That's not what I want. I just want these. So if I double click this thing, should pop it open. And there it is, my effects, all the work that I did, it all shows. And this is a full HD clip and it's only 15 meg. This is emailable in size. So before the start of class next week, that is what you guys are going to send me. And then next week, we are going to be jumping into lesson 2. So what I want to do is open this up to questions if there are any. And then if we don't have any, I'm just going to wrap up the lesson and then give you guys some time to work and answer questions as needed. Otherwise, if you're all set and you're going to wrap this up at another time, that's totally fine too. I just ask that you get me this lesson 1 file by the start of class next week via email. Cool? Any questions jumping out, you guys? So if you don't have any questions, you guys are good. You can log out. I got the attendance taken. We should be pretty much set. Wait, let me make sure I got everybody before you leave. Ethan, are you here? Yes, okay, Ethan, I just want to make sure I got you for attendance. So that's what I got for you guys. So if you're good, I'm going to kill this recording. I'll have this posted onto Blackboard and onto the YouTube channel probably within the next 20, 30 minutes or so. Otherwise, I will see you guys next week. Thanks.